following the commanding and euphoric victories over Tottenham and Bayern Munich. The encounter at Stamford Bridge presented a profoundly different type of challenge for Arsenal. One that ultimately exposed several critical vulnerabilities while simultaneously offering a potentially valuable lesson in the marathon of a title race. The match against Chelsea was a stark departure from the technical masterclasses of the previous week, morphing instead into an aggressive, physical battle that seemed tailored to disrupt Arsenal's rhythm. The initial team sheet delivered a significant psychological and tactical blow with the absence of William Saliba, compounded by Gabriel Magalhaes's injury, forcing a rarely seen central defensive partnership of Jakub Kiwior and the young Brazilian Marquinhos. This pairing, with only one previous outing together in the Carabao Cup against Brighton, was always going to be a point of uncertainty. And that lack of ingrained understanding manifested early in the game's disjointed phases. Analysing the raw numbers paints a picture of controlled frustration. Arsenal held 62% of the possession against a Chelsea side that played over half the game with 10 men, yet only managed 4 shots on target and were actually outshot 11-8 in total. The expected goals metric told a slightly more favourable story at 1.26 to Chelsea's 0.73. But it couldn't mask the overarching reality. Arsenal created nowhere near enough clear-cut opportunities. The performance was littered with uncharacteristic errors that could be categorised into 3 distinct buckets: technical mistakes, tactical disconnects, and most glaringly, physical and concentration-based lapses. The attack became dangerously one-dimensional, heavily concentrated down the right-hand side where Bukayo Saka operated, mirroring Chelsea's own primary threat channel where the phenomenal Reece James, deservedly named man of the match, held sway. The game's temperament was set on a knife edge from the opening whistle, defined by Chelsea's deliberate and overpowering physicality. Moises Caicedo embodied this approach, setting a tone of forceful shoves, kicks, and relentless pressure, with Enzo Fernandez following suit. This aggressive strategy yielded an early dividend for Chelsea in the form of referee Anthony Taylor's quick trigger, brandishing 3 yellow cards within the first 15 minutes. This early flurry of bookings, including one for Marquinhos, placed several Arsenal players in a perilous position, caught between the necessity to fully commit to the physical duel and the anxiety of receiving a second yellow. Its psychological warfare contributed to a palpable unease across the Arsenal side, disrupting their ability to settle into their usual technical rhythm. The central build-up play, usually so fluid, looked hesitant and sloppy. Goalkeeper David Raya often found himself looking for passing options that weren't clearly available, as both Kiwior and Marquinhos seemed unsure of their positioning and receiving angles, creating a tangible disconnect between the defensive line and the midfield pivot, an unsurprising yet critical issue for a partnership with 0 Premier League experience together. The moment that truly ignited Arsenal's belief and showcased their latent threat came just before the hour mark, stemming from their favoured right half space. Martin Ødegaard, having just entered the pitch, received the ball and immediately brought Bakama authority. He found Saka, who was engaged in an intense personal battle with Marc Cucurella. Crucially, Cucurella was already on a yellow card from the first half, and this detail proved decisive. As Saka drove at him, Cucurella, terrified of committing a foul and receiving a second booking, became hesitant and stood off. That momentary hesitation was all Saka needed. He cut back onto his favoured left foot, bought himself a yard of space, and delivered an inch-perfect curling cross into the heart of the penalty area. There, Leandro Trossard had intelligently positioned himself between Chelsea's centre-backs, arriving with perfect timing to guide a brilliant header into the net. The immediate reaction of Arsenal players sprinting to retrieve the ball from the net, urged on by Trossard, spoke volumes about their mentality to chase a winner, even when not performing at their peak. However, for every moment of quality like the equaliser, there were multiple instances of self-inflicted pressure. A prime example encapsulating all 3 error types, technical, tactical, physical, was the sequence leading to Takehiro Tomiyasu's first half yellow card. Arsenal were attempting to build from the back, but a massive gap appeared between Raya, the centre-backs, and Tomiyasu receiving the ball on the left touchline. Instead of playing a simple, deliberate pass inside to the available midfield runner, Tomiyasu took a heavy touch infield, effectively dribbling into a crowd of Chelsea players near the halfway line. This technical error in a dangerous area was compounded by a tactical misjudgment. He was isolated with no immediate support and sealed by a physical lapse as the ever-alert Reece James easily dispossessed him. Tomoyasu, now scrambling to recover, was forced to haul James down, earning a needless booking that limited his defensive aggression for the remainder of the match. Chelsea repeatedly exploited this kind of disorganisation, finding alarming ease in playing through Arsenal's central corridors. In one first-half move, Reece James combined with Malo Gusto on the right, gliding past two half-hearted Arsenal challenges before spreading the play to the left, highlighting a surprising softness in midfield protection. Chelsea's goal, which came against the run of play after Caicedo's deserved red card for a horrific straight-legged challenge, was a monument to defensive frailty and inexperience. It originated from a soft conceded free kick and a corner that followed. From the set piece, Arsenal's defensive organisation, so often marshalled by the commanding presence of Saliba or Gabriel, completely broke down. David Raya's positioning was passive, neither decisively claiming his 6-yard box nor holding his line. The ball was flicked on at the near post, sailing over a static and crucially distracted Marquinhos. The young defender was caught in a futile grappling match with Enzo Fernandez, his focus entirely on the man instead of the ball's trajectory. Consequently, the header flew directly over his oblivious head and into the far corner. It was a desperately soft goal to concede, especially against 10 men, and underscored exactly what Arsenal were missing: the authoritative, ball-aware dominance of their first-choice central defenders. Amidst the collective struggles, the towering figure of Declan Rice stood alone as Arsenal's consistent source of quality and fight. His performance was a masterclass in midfield omnipresence, operating initially as a number 8 and then dropping into the single pivot in the second half. Rice was everywhere. His touch map would show a blanket of influence across the entire pitch, with 75 successful touches. He was the primary ball progressor, the chief ball winner, and the emotional leader. One moment epitomised his defensive value, with Chelsea breaking dangerously into the area around Arsenal's penalty box. Estevao found space and looked set to pull the trigger, only for Rice to materialise with an immaculately timed, last-ditch sliding tackle that cleanly won the ball, preventing a certain high-quality chance. In possession, while his passing map showed a high volume of accurate distributions, there was a notable lack of line-breaking passes into truly dangerous areas, a reflection of Chelsea's deep block and Arsenal's own stagnant movement ahead of him. As Mikel Arteta threw on attacking substitutes like Odegaard, Gabriel Jesus and later Eddie Nketiah, Arsenal's approach became increasingly desperate and direct. They committed numbers forward, at times leaving themselves exposed to Chelsea's counter-attacking outlets like the speedy Angelo. There were half chances, a fierce Martinelli drive well saved by Robert Sanchez, a late Jesus effort, and a strong penalty shout. But the final crisp combination or moment of individual magic never arrived. The frustration was palpable, summed up by a late sequence where Jurrien Timber, surging forward from left-back, accidentally headed the ball away from the waiting Nketiah, who was poised for a tap-in. Ultimately, this result must be framed within the broader context of Arsenal's formidable start to the season. This was the third gruelling match in a week, following the emotional highs of a North London derby and a Champions League epic. The squad was visibly fatigued, and the injury to Saliba was a critical destabilising factor. While the performance was undoubtedly disappointing, and Chelsea can rightly feel they were the better side on the day, securing a point at Stamford Bridge, even under these circumstances, is not a disaster. The Premier League table shows Arsenal 5 points clear at the summit, having now navigated away trips to Anfield, Old Trafford, St James Park, and Stamford Bridge in the first 13 games. Sometimes, when the fluidity deserts you and key components are missing, grinding out a draw is a necessary skill in a title challenge. The key takeaway is not the single point earned, but the clear evidence of what this team lacks without its defensive linchpins. The path forward is clear. Get Saliba and Gabriel back fit, regain defensive solidity, and convert these gritty away draws into statement victories when rivals visit the Emirates later in the campaign.